This week, we're honoring the passing of Mark Elliott. Friend, mentor, industry icon, Mark had such an impact on so many people's lives and pushed our industry forward. The news weighed heavy on me this week. It's been at the forefront of my thoughts and conversations. Fortunately, a few years ago, as part of the Bharat Shah Speaker Series, our good friend Mitch Shah had the privilege of sitting down with Mark. I believe this interview captured the essence of who Mark was, both professionally and personally. And I'm honored to share it with you today. Our hearts go out to the Elliott family and the Hodges Ward Elliott family. And from our family to yours, thanks for sharing Mark with us.
Tough week.
Tough week. Understatement.
Yeah. I think there's going to be, it's going to be like a conference attendee list showing up in Atlanta tonight and tomorrow for our dear friend.
I think you're right.
Yeah. You talk about leading a life that matters, right? It's interesting because, he made everybody feel like that they were like the most important person, right, in his life. That's a pretty special, gift.
Yeah, and you get that from talking to people too.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, every conversation I've had this week, even the most business conversations, like attorneys and negotiating deals, have all started with 5-minute diatribe about Mark.
Yeah. If you knew him, you loved. If you knew him, you respected him. You were in awe of like just the things that he would do personally, and the impact that he'd have. And I think the loss for many of us is that it's not fair that all the things that he was wanting to do and shepherding with his family, and most certainly the impact on those that loved him outside of that, at age 58, not being able to see that through, feels terribly unfair.
And there's such a bright future there for everyone.
Yeah, we would have, I would say 75% of the conversations, I probably talk to him every week, at least once a week. And I would say that 75% of the conversations were about family and faith. Right? Like, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, let's chat about, let's chat about this. And, for him, I think what was really like the next journey for him was seeing Bryn and Paxton continue to find their dreams and fulfill their goals and ambitions, and being there along for the ride. Having the ability to walk your daughter down the aisle is something that he really, really coveted, because, his father wasn't there, as he was growing up. And that's just sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, you're going to make us all cry, sir. So.
Yeah, it's, Teague and I, the intention of the speaker series wasn't a remembrance video, right? And I think we have found myself rewatching that conversation with Mark. Obviously, we lost our dear friend Arnie earlier this year. And I'm so glad that those exist, to tell their story, in their words, with their emotion, to make sure that, these icons as human beings and as leaders live on.
I think is why we kind of wanted to do this. I mean, I really feel so lucky we've got this. So let me ask, why was Mark on the Bradshaw Speaker Series, right?
Yeah.
After your father, but why was Mark the first guest you chose to have? That's pretty powerful. You get out a lot of people, man. You get out a lot of people.
Yeah, Mark represents all the things that really is good in humanity. Like, here's a guy that never actually went to college because he couldn't afford to go to college, but is regarded today, as one of the most brilliant people anyone has ever met. His ability to take information and be able to disseminate that and provide, real context to it is incredible. But at the same time, he's always thinking about the theological aspects of life, the human characteristics of people. And so while you're together, you just feel like you're becoming a better person. And I said, what an amazing way for these students to get a grasp that, they're about to embark upon something very special as they enter their career. And it won't be linear, and you'll have a lot of bumps in the road, but you really can be an incredible parent, spouse, leader, and be present, and do all these things, right? If you come, if you're grounded in all of that. So Mark, to me, his voice and his heart carries so much weight to so many people. I really didn't think about anybody else. If as we think about the people that followed Mark, right? I think all of them, we're very proud to do so.
Yeah, so well said. And I thank you for coming on today, but the interview that you guys did so that we can watch it over and over and remember.
Teague, you've heard this, we talk about the conversation with God, right? At the end, it's pretty emotional, right? And what people, really have to think about the life that they've led. I knew how Mark felt about that question, which is why I asked it. And then I subsequently, continued to ask, in this conversation. But that last 5 minutes of that conversation, I sat on my couch night before last and I cried for 2 hours, just, the comparison for him about one's life and one's eulogy, right? And the life people remember, you haven't had is the one that you lived. He did that every single day, right? He wanted to be remembered as a faithful friend when, like the rest of us, we're going to live for a long, long, long time, whatever. But he wanted to be known, as that. And again, there's probably 1,000 people that show up between tonight and tomorrow.
So I think that brings me to one of my questions that hit me hard. How do you grieve for a work friend? Okay, Arnie, Tom Onken, now Mark, and others. Your family doesn't really understand. Your friends don't really understand. It's this community that get it. And you've had the same conversations I've had this week. And it's this. but sometimes you feel like you're alone on a couch by yourself.
Yeah.
In your thoughts.
Yeah.
That's part of what I'm struggling with.
Yeah. Obviously, Reshma, and Mark and Lori and Brandon Paxton, our kids grew up together. We have a very deep personal relationship with Arnie and Ruth. Reshma and I did as well. There's blurred lines, right, between the work that we do and, Teague, it's like, you and Beth and Reshma, like, this is what we do, right? The people that you love are better halves than the people that you love, that you spend time with. We interconnect. I think it's what's special about our business, right? If I remember back just, a month ago, at the Hunter conference, just the joy of people taking off their masks once they felt like it was comfortable doing it, and hugging and being together, et cetera. Look, it tells you all the things that is special about our business. And you have special people in our business. We know who they are. We know who they are, right? They're just beyond, the iconic, lore that, that we provide. They're just deeply good human beings. And, when you lose somebody like that, I don't think you ever get over it. I don't think you should. I think you remember it. And hopefully these conversations, continue to help us remember and just be better people, right? Because it matters, the impact that you have on other people's lives.
I think we're going to be talking about Mark for a long, long, long time.
Yeah, and because of the impact that he's had. Look, on a deeply personal note, when we talk about leading lives that matter, all right, this is what we do professionally, this is what we do with our families, et cetera. But what impact are we making, right? It's why, the things that we do philanthropically, things that we do, investments into our community. I think we all have this desire to make the world around us better, but there's a few that really figured out how to do it. And Mark is, right at the top of that list.
It's really one of those special things when we decided to do the speaker series, and my dad came up with the idea of sharing stories that I thought very clearly about the lineup of speakers that we would have. And the first was obviously my father, and a very special time that we all had together last fall. Mark was always going to be next in line, and you'll soon hear reminded many times over my life to read biographies. And biographies represent many stories that you can learn from, stories of good human beings, learn how people have learned in their own lives, the mistakes that they've made, how they've struggled, how they've leaned on faith and resolve to get them through, and how they have led lives that matter. And that's the mission of this speaker series. And that's why I asked my dear friend Mark to join us here today. With all the accolades about the number of hotels that he has represented on both the buyer and the seller side, he has really been the individual in our industry that everyone from the CEO of Marriott all the way to that owner-operator with 3 hotels have leaned on for guidance and counsel. And that's the professional side that makes Mark and his team very special. What we're going to dig in a little bit today is what are the circumstances that led to that. And Mark, I'm going to show some pictures back here as we go, and I want to point to this picture right here. And one of the things that I think makes us all special is the circumstances that we were born into. Talk a little bit about this picture, what was going on in your family and your community and the world, the time of your birth.
Sure. So this picture is actually taken right before I was born. So this is probably 1959, 1960. It's my father and kind of my 2 favorite uncles. My father is in the glasses, and then my Uncle Bob is standing up in the suit, and he is now in his 80s and is probably still wearing a suit today. And then my Uncle Bill has passed away.
When you think about growing up, there are specific circumstances, as I mentioned, that we all deal with. Your father, your mother, your sister, that was your family unit. Your life changed very early in your life. Talk to us about growing up in Indiana, how you grew up. Talk about that situation that you were born into, and then spend a little time, if you will, talking about just the path that led you on.
Sure. So my father and two uncles kind of represented the American dream. Their father, my grandfather, actually ran the YMCA in Chicago during the Great Depression. And so, coming out of that, this is late 50s, early 60s. They're all starting out in their business career. They had great vision of the future, to live out the American dream. And when I was 4 years old, 1967, my father died by suicide. And so it changed our lives. It changed the trajectory of our lives. My mother went to work and worked at a bank basically through my high school years. And I grew up always thinking I was kind of upper middle class, but in hindsight realized that we were actually, pretty much lived barely above the poverty line for most of our lives. I think this is factually correct. I think my mother never made more than $17,000 a year in her life, during that time. So. My uncles went on to kind of live out the American dream. My Uncle Bill was sitting down, ended up co-owning a company that was an oil drilling company that made the drills, manufactured the drills. And my other uncle was a civil engineer and built up a very significant civil engineering firm in the state of Indiana.
You told me a great story about your mother and how she raised you and your sister. You were 4 years old, and your sister was 10 years old,
right,
at the time of your father's death, and you two very successful uncles. Share with the audience the one thing about your mother and that you always remembered and always held close to you in terms of how she thought about the successes of your uncles and how she thought about you and your sister.
So there's two things about my mother. There are two greatest attributes. One is that she doesn't have a jealous bone in her body. She's a person that roots for everybody's success around her. So as my uncles went on to become what we would interpret successful, financially well off and secure, every time that they bought a car or a house or a boat or what have you, she was so excited for them. I mean, she was just genuinely excited to hear about living out this American dream. And so the second thing about her is she's probably one of the greatest encouragers that you'll ever meet. And so I was telling Mitt the story the other day that I was in 6th grade, and I was playing 6th grade basketball, elementary basketball, and I was way overweight. And I was scared to death that the following year I wouldn't make the junior high basketball team. And so one night after a game, I didn't have a very good game, and my mom said, "Hey, Mark, what's wrong?" And I said, "Well, Mom, I'm just way overweight, and at this pace, I'm just not going to be able to play basketball beyond 6th grade." And I grew up in Indiana, where playing basketball was kind of a rite of passage. And so she says, "Oh no, Mark, you're not overweight. You're just big boned." And so that summer I grew 4 or 5 inches, and by the end of the summer I was just a string bean, barely a skeleton. And I made the team. And so I was coming home after a game, my 7th grade year, and Mom said, "What's wrong, Mark? You don't seem happy." And I said, "Well, Mom, I don't know if you saw the game, but I got killed under the boards. I couldn't get a rebound. I got pushed around." I said, "I'm so pitifully skinny and weak. I can't keep pace out there." And she said, "Oh no, Mark, you're not skinny, you're just small bones. So that's my mom. So she always has an encouraging word. So.
Let's talk about you as a teenager in high school and some of the pressures you felt, what's going on in your psyche, transitions or turning points that you experienced while you were growing up as a teenager.
Growing up, one of the things, because of our circumstances, we always worked. And so from kind of the time I was 10 years old on, I always had a job, many of them self-employed, cutting grass, painting houses. And, when you're, 12 years old, 13 years old, you can always be the low bidder for every job, so you don't have any overhead. So we were able to get some business because of our low bids. But so kind of always worked and went to high school, worked, played sports, and so life was pretty full as far as the time. The one thing that in hindsight I look back I'm very grateful for is my mother. And I just told you how much she made. She spent $1,000 a year, which when you're making what her income was an enormous amount, to send me to a kind of a private Christian prep school in Indiana, and I got a really good education there. And some of my closest friends are still from school, and have great influence in my life. And then also during my teenage years, I had the good fortune and blessing of meeting my wife, who was a very close friend of one of the other guys on the basketball team. And so my joke was that when they stopped holding hands in church, I kind of moved in and started dating her. So, and then we ended up deciding to marry early, and so we got married when we were 18 and 19, which people look at me like I have three heads when I say that today. But we got married when we were 18 and 19 and moved to Atlanta to venture out into the commercial real estate brokerage business. And at the time, my thinking was a couple things. One was I read that 9 out of 10 people, well, let me back up. So from the time I was 8 years old to the time I was 18, if you had asked me what am I going to do with my life, I would have said I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. I loved math and science. I was a math and science guy. I was geared to go that way. My two uncles you saw in the picture were both engineers, so that's what I was going to do. And then my spring break, my senior year in high school, I panicked. Instead of going on spring break, I actually went out and interviewed for a sales job. And so I spent, from the time I graduated, the next 18 months in basically 2 sales jobs, and ended up actually selling copiers for a year. And at the end of the year, realized that selling and marketing was a niche that I thought was a calling for me. And so, and then I read about, what can you sell where you can make a decent income and kind of have no capital, no background, what have you. And it's real estate. It's like a high beta of risk, but a high alpha reward. So I pitched my wife and proposed to her and her parents that we give it 1 year, and if I failed, I'd go to night school, become an engineer. And so we moved to Atlanta to go to the largest market that I thought we could afford to live in. And my wife, Lori, got a job at a bank, and we took our little meager savings and we gutted it out for a year. And the original idea was to maybe be an apartment broker, a retail broker. And about 10 months into it, I stumbled onto a hotel deal that was marketed by the 2 guys that became my partners, Jack Ward and Bill Hodges. And I loved the lodging business because it was a lot more moving parts than other kinds of real estate. It was a national business versus a regional business, a local business. And there were very few competitors, and I thought that was really important place to start a career. So I've been in lodging ever since.
If you go back to Indiana, when you graduated from high school, you actually told me that it wasn't an option about going to college or starting to work. I mean, you actually had no option, right?
Well, I was homeless the day after I graduated from high school because my mother decided to move out of town and move to Louisville where my sister was living. So I literally had to find a place to go live. So I ended up renting a room for that year and a half for the first couple of months in an elderly lady's house, and then I ended up renting a room from one of my high school friends who went to college. I rented his bedroom for the next probably 15 months of that. So yeah, so I was on my own from 18 on. Yeah.
So everybody loves a good love story. So just walk backwards, and I know you could talk about this forever, but I want you to talk about Lori for a moment, and the relationship that you had through high school, the decision to move to Atlanta. Right. We're going to get to Atlanta in a second. I want to be able to talk about what happened once you got to Atlanta, but talk about how that changed your life.
Sure. Well, the one thing that you and I have in common that probably bonds us is that we both married way over our head, and I did that with. I mean, Lori was, she was beautiful, she was smart, and passionate, and compassionate. We got to Atlanta, and we were in this group one night, and it was a Bible study, and it was the very first night there. And one of the guys said, "If you had to describe your spouse as a color, how would you describe her?" So I was like, "Wow, we're not in Kansas anymore. Let me try to think about this." And I said about Lori, I said, "She's purple." I said, "Purple?" I said, "Yeah." I said, she's got red hot passion. She cares about things. She wants justice and wants things to be right." I said she's also blue, and that she's extremely compassionate. So if you're down and out, coming across Lori's path is really one of the best things that'll happen to you. So for those two things in particular, and then the other things, I just was madly in love with Lori, and decided that it was important for me to marry her before she grew up and saw that she had a lot better options, and so and she was willing to go on this adventure, so which is what it's been. So.
Very much the truth that everybody knows, that we certainly overshot our skis.
Oh yeah.
So you moved to Atlanta. There's a test that you were required to take.
Okay. Yeah.
Talk to us about the test. That you want to embark upon commercial real estate.
Right.
I think it's fascinating, and at least for this audience, to understand some of the thesis. And as you hear more from Mark, you will understand that there's a number of things that make him special, the kind of human being he is, the values that he has, but really how he sees the world, and the way that he can think about things and process it and use those human characteristics towards success. But the test that you were asked to take as you were embarking upon your career as a newly married teenager in Atlanta, tell us about that.
Right, sure. So I still have the test somewhere in my archives, my files, but so I was interviewing, and I was 19 years old, no college education, and trying to go into commercial real estate. So there weren't a lot of people that would even interview you, and the few that did, one of them says, "Look, I'll interview you, I'll give you this test." And this test was prepared by Columbia University, and it's a commercial real estate broker's aptitude test. And so this test will basically kind of tell us if you'll be successful in this business or not. And so there were two pieces to it. One piece was a kind of a math aptitude, and I did okay on that. And then the other one was a psychological profile to see if you'd be successful. And so took the test, turned it in, they sent it off to Columbia, came back. Because back then this was mail, right? So they had to mail it. So it took me a couple of weeks before I found out the results of this. And so the guy who was running the firm called me, and he said, "Look, we got the test results back. You did okay on the math side, but this test said you'll never be successful as a commercial real estate broker." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "Well, I'll send you the test," which he did. And he said, "It says that you lack ego drive." And so I said, "Well, what is ego drive? What does that mean?" And they said, "Well, there's tendencies that you'll have. You'll have tendencies to make big plans. You have tendencies to strategize, but your tendency will also be you won't execute. You won't make the cold calls. You'll spend too much time planning, not enough time executing." And so I reflected upon the conclusion of that test, and I called him back and I said, "You know what? I think your test is exactly right." I said, "Those are my tendencies without a doubt." And I said, "But I think that one of the things about being human is you can make a decision to correct the things that are amiss." And so I said, "So I think we could come up with a plan that would discipline me to execute and spend my time executing." He said, "Nope, the test is never wrong. You'll never be successful. I'm not going to hire you." So he did. So I got another guy who fortunately didn't give me a test, and he hired me. And so I made it. But I kept that test, and I kept it in front of me for a couple of years. And so what I did was I structured my day for the first 10 years in the business to overcome that weakness. And so the first thing I do when I got into the office every morning is I would make 10 cold calls, because that would be the thing that I would put off and procrastinate. It was critical to business. So for 10 years, every day, first thing I did is call 10 people I didn't know, try to introduce myself and introduce our firm. And that discipline allowed me to compensate for something where I needed to adjust to make a career.
And all the things that are fascinating about that, the one learning lesson that I find very useful is the thing that you like to do the least, to do that first.
Always do that first. And to this day, I still do that. So whatever the worst part of my day is, I do it first thing in the morning, just to get it out of the way. Yep.
So now it's 1983. Bill Hodges and Jack Ward have a very nice boutique firm, and I'll point you to this picture here, and now all of a sudden they get to be introduced to a young, aggressive real estate broker, and I know the story goes where Jack wanted to hire you, Bill didn't want to hire you,
yeah,
but you find your way in, and this firm in the 1980s, they would sell on average, they were selling days inns, and they were selling, some small limited service properties. On average, total volume for the year, about $25 million in assets.
Right.
Is what they did. So Debbie, when she was introducing Mark, one of the statistics that she mentioned is that the firm has transacted on $5 billion over the last 2 years. That's a 100-fold increase from when you arrived. There's a lot that went into these last 30 years. Talk to us about some of the themes. Arriving, what immediately you went to work doing, what has been some of the more important things that you believe have been the secrets to the firm's success, your success, in terms of where Hodges Ward Elliott is today?
Sure. So the joke is, so Jack Ward in the middle, and Bill founded the firm about the same month Saturday Night Live started 40 years ago. So that's the one thing we have in common with SNL. And Jack is now retired. He's 82 years old. He's been retired for about 7 years. But Jack always had kind of a pastor's heart, really. And so he saw this young kid begging for a job, which I was. And so I took him to lunch over here at Daly's, just a few blocks away, and made my pitch. And so he went back and told Bill, and Bill had met me, and he said, I think we should hire Mark. And Bill said, I just don't really have time to train anybody that green. If you want to hire him, that's fine, but I'm not interested. And so I normally tell that story when Bill's around, because he always denies part of that story, but it's absolutely true. And but they became absolutely incredible partners in our 30 years together. I've never heard one of them raise their voice to each other or to me, even in moments of disagreement or discussion. It's always a very rational discussion, and we worked through to a mutually agreed solution. So just incredible human beings. And Bill's one of the hardest working guys I know. He's in the office every morning at 7:30. He rarely leaves before 7. And great father, great grandfather. So they were both incredible role models for me, which I did learn a ton. So our business, so to Mitt's point, so we were selling 6 to 10 motels a year, really small independents. The first hotel I sold was the Alamo Plaza Motel in Augusta, Georgia. And I remember this hotel was so bad that when I went to get the assignment and I told the seller how much I thought it was worth, he said, "Oh, no, it's not worth nearly that much." So, like the only time I ever heard that in 30 years of the business. It was a really, really bad hotel. And so, by 1987, we were pushing and making the cold calls. And September 30th, 1987, we sold 2 hotels in the same day. One was a Residence Inn, and we sold that to Marriott Corp right as they were buying the company. And we sold the Holiday Inn in Temple, Texas. So Bill went to the Residence Inn closing, and I went to the Holiday Inn closing in Texas. At the time, it was an incredible amount of money for me personally. And so, and you didn't wire money back in the, you didn't have the banking that you had today. You actually got checks. So you literally got the check and you put it in the briefcase and had to carry it home. And I was always worried about, losing that briefcase. So I literally carried that thing, to the bathroom, to the restaurant, to the plane to get home and bring it home. But I remember I left at closing and I went to a Mexican restaurant in Dallas and cried because I was just amazed that,
Mark, you have a philosophy on this, and there's a lot to this story from what we heard about how you grew up and how caring and nurturing that environment was for you, but to receive a check of that magnitude that made you realize that you could really accomplish many of the professional goals and care for your family was one of the things that I know that mattered the most to you, and even today, there's a human component to that. I think that would be valuable for this audience of mostly college students in terms of just the secret and how you view things outside just the pure analytics.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I was moved to tears, and still am, is the fact that in this country, you have amazing freedoms, and you kind of think about history for thousands of years and how people have lived life, and you think about the way and the opportunities we have to live life. And in this country that, you can accomplish, not just business-wise or financially, but accomplish important things in life which transcend or much more important than business, that you have the freedom to do that. And you can make choices, you make decisions, and you can actually go do that. And that's extraordinarily rare in the world. And even in the more advanced countries, it's still rare. So I love the country and I love that moment. So I was a math science guy, and so I didn't read. I read as little as possible when I was in high school. I basically read enough to make the grades, but I didn't have any passion for reading. I can't remember really any novels I read during high school. And so what I loved about real estate was, to me, I thought it's math. Like, this is something I can do. There's a cash flow, there's a value, there's financing, it's math. And so, I remember I went to my very first big showing of a decent hotel with a buyer. And I had, back then, I had reams of computer printouts of all the analysis. And so we're in the hotel for about 10 minutes, and the guy turned to me and said, "I'll pay $5.5 million." It's like, how can you reach that conclusion? I haven't gone through the reams of paperwork here that I have. And I realized that he had an instinct. This is a guy that had bought and sold 30-some hotels in his lifetime, entrepreneur, and he had an instinct that was beyond just the math and analytics. And so one of the things I ended up doing as a person, not with a business strategy to it, but as kind of a challenge from a friend, is because of my lack of interest in the humanities, and because I didn't go to college or get a liberal arts education, we challenged each other to read the 100 most important books ever written. Now, there's lots of lists of that, there's debate, but Mortimer Adler, who was a University of Chicago dean, really put together kind of the first big list of the 100 most important books, and they tend to be classics. And so we haven't read all 100 of them, but we've gotten through maybe half of them or so. But in doing that, it developed a different part of me that allowed me to connect and realize that decisions, they have mathematical and even scientific input, but decisions are made by human beings, and human beings are extraordinarily complex and deep and relational, and that, good decisions aren't made from what the computer screen tells you. Good decisions are taking the data from the computer screen, but being able to interpret in the context of the world around you. And so one of the things now I look like, if I give advice to anybody, is that if I had any business advice, it was to read and read outside your discipline. So if you're a humanities person, try to read some logic and mathematics books. If you're a math and science person, where I was, try to read the humanities, but be well developed, and it will help you, I think, relationally with your colleagues and with your peers and with your customers. There you go.
So we, during the beginning of yours and Lori's love affair, you told me about commitments that you made, and there was a pact that you made. Talk to us about the pact that you made.
Sure. So when Lori and I were dating as teenagers, we're planning our future, and at this point, I had her convinced to marry me, more or less, and we're talking about what's life going to be. And one of the things, this is an encouraging thing, I think, is that when people say, oh, you'll change those idealistic views. When you're 10 years older, when you're 20 years older, you'll change that, and because we had views on how to be married and how to raise kids and how to live life and all that kind of thing. And we're formulating that as young people. And I will tell you, 85–90% of what we describe the life that we want it to be is actually the way we've lived out life. We've made adjustments along the way as we learned some things and learned that we were wrong on things and continuing to learn. But by and large, you really do live out life that you envision. And so one of those things we talked about is we always wanted to adopt a child, have children, or give birth to children, but also adopt a child or two from a developing country in particular. So through a series of circumstances, Lori suggested that we do that first, and so we did. So we embarked on and looked at 50 different countries and ended up choosing Peru as a country from which we wanted to adopt. And so this is our son at 6 months old, and this is kind of the first day not first day, this is probably the first week we were in Lima, Peru, with our beautiful boy. And Lori lived down there for 4 months, right? It was during the height of the Shining Path terrorism. So second day we were there, a car bomb went off outside the hotel. One night when I was back in the States, she was on her way to have dinner, and she, right at the last second, changed restaurants she was going to eat at with Paxton. The restaurant she was in blew up, blew up. So it was a crazy, crazy time. And so as a consequence, we named Paxton, which in Latin is City of Peace. So,
Tell us about Bryn.
yeah, so as soon as we got back, we decided, okay, well, let's try to have children. So we did. So Lori got pregnant right away, and we had Bryn. And so Bryn tells this great story about her name. So, we tell the story of Paxton's story and City of Peace and all that. It's like this great romantic story. So Bryn tells this story, even just this last few months, it was cracking us up. So she said, so Mom, that's so amazing, Paxton's story. How did you get the name Bryn? And Lori said, well, I was watching MTV, and there was this girl rock band, and the drummer was named Bryn. And I just thought it sounded really good. So that's how my daughter got her name. So,
Your circumstances growing up without your father in your life, your sister, your mother together, boy and a girl, how did those circumstances shape the kind of father you wanted to be and the parents you and Lori wanted to be, and talk to us a little bit about those decisions that you've made along the way, and how you've been able to process where you've come from to now Bryn and Paxton, because we're going to get to them again in just a moment.
Sure. So a couple things. One is my business involves travel. I travel 3 days a week. A lot of parents have to travel, 5-6 days a week, and so that's one part of our life. And then the other part of our life was the fact that even when I was home, I wasn't necessarily engaged early on when they were younger. And my partner, Bill Hodges, being a great partner, called me out on it and said, you really need to make sure you're emotionally engaged with your family when you're present, be fully present. So it was a great lesson. Kids were little, 5-6 years old. So from that time on, whenever I got home, no matter what time I get home, I would put my cell phone in my bathroom and wouldn't look at it again until the kids went to bed. So was really kind of engaged, and it was a good life lesson. The other thing we did was tried to find experiences to spend time with our kids, and one of the things Lori and I were debating is where to send them to school. I wanted to send them to a private school because I wanted them to get the best education, probably because I didn't go to college, and so I was, wanted my kids to go to college, and Lori wanted to send them to public school because we both grew up in without financial privilege, and Lori wanted. So we just had this debate, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So Lori and I had never snow skied, and so we're 30 years old, and we're getting, or 32, 33 years old, we're getting ready to go snow skiing for the very first time in our life, and somebody says to us, and we're right in the middle of having this debate. Paxton's 4 years old, he's getting ready to go to school, and we're having this debate, and we're flying out, and somebody said to us, make sure you take a private lesson, not a group lesson. And I said, why is that? They said, you'll learn to ski much faster. So on the plane, I said to Lori, I said, that was pretty interesting advice. And I said, what do you think about that? She says, yeah, it's probably true. I said, I bet that's true with math too. And she said, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. So I convinced her to homeschool the kids. And I said, look, it's kindergarten. You can't mess them up. So she homeschooled them for 2 or 3 years. And then we started traveling a lot as a family. And so we continued the homeschool. We had some friends that basically educated our kids up until junior high. And then from junior high to high school, we actually hired a professional tutoring company, and they tutored our kids through high school. And so they had as I told the kids, I said, look, if you're 35 and you're floundering, you're going to look back and have a lot to complain about. But this is the choices we made, and in hindsight, we were able to spend an enormous amount of time with our kids that we wouldn't have otherwise, and I'm very grateful for it.
We're going to get to him in a moment, and you can brag about him a little bit more in just a moment. So, Coach Elliott, one of our favorite passions together.
Love basketball.
Well, and I think we love basketball for the same reason. It's 5 on the court at the same time, different races, religions, cultures, all having to be selfless, trust one another, and our Atlanta Hawks embarking upon the playoffs makes us feel like that's really important, not only in the game but in life as well. You've got an entire group of students that are out here, this next generation that will too live their own journey. Share with them, the one piece of advice that you have for them as they continue to embark forward on their own trail.
And from what perspective?
From a life perspective.
From a life perspective? Well, I think obviously the picture of a basketball team, teamwork is critically important. And I think one of the things, you have millennials, you have Xers, you have boomers. I'm the last year of the boomers, and my wife is the first year of the Xers. So we're cross-generational, and so you hear all these things, the differences and what have you. One of the things that I think is the strength of millennials is they work in teams a whole lot better than boomers. Kind of caught in kind of a strength, which is American individualism, but it also, your strengths can always become your Achilles heel. And so I think one of the beautiful things about the millennial generation is the idea of teamwork.
Look at this picture right here. What's the one thing that matters the most to you right now?
Well, my faith and my family, and it sounds cliche, but it is 100% true. We get up in the morning, and our kids are scattered now, and we're scattered half the time. I'm traveling, and so 8 o'clock every morning we have a quick family call where everybody calls in, and we link together thanks to the Apple iPhone, and have a quick call together. So that's an important thing. Sometimes we'll pray together on that call. If somebody's going through something challenging, which one of us normally is, and just share about kind of what are we looking forward to that day? What's before us? So or we'll text, and again, great thing about technology, you can text. So we were a group texting today as a family about being with you, and so the kids are scattered and not going to be able to be here, but they wanted to be here, and so it's just nice, So faith and family.
Paxton?
There you go. So Paxton picked his own path, and so he loved basketball, partly because maybe I love basketball, but he just developed a love for his own, and because he's from Peru, he's not the tallest human being in the world. He's 5'4", and he played basketball. They played homeschool leagues, and the homeschool leagues, the teams are actually pretty good because the kids go to school till noon, and then they went and practice all day. So the homeschool basketball team had like an 85% winning record for for 10 years. I mean, incredible record. He played basketball. He played basketball through his freshman year of high school, and he got almost knocked out one night at a game, and he got in the car. He doesn't even remember it, I think. I think he might have had a minor concussion, but he said, "Dad, I got to get a different sport. You know, this isn't going to work." And to this day, he'll sneak off and play a pickup basketball game. He loves the sport. So he switched to golf his sophomore year, and he was terrible. In the first tournament, he went to play. He had a 10 on the first hole, shot 110, finished dead last. And so he walked off the course and said, "Hey, so what do you think?" He said, "Oh, man, Dad, it's the greatest day of my life." And he loved it. He loved playing golf. So by the time he got out of high school, he was not terrible anymore. He was okay. And then he just happened to a mutual acquaintance bump into a guy who's a world-class golf coach, coached 5 number 1 players in the world, and they hit it off. They're just like brothers, a generation separate. And so I spent the last 2.5 years trying to become a professional golfer. And so a few months ago, he got invited to a Pebble Beach Invitational Tournament, which was 32 teams, 1 professional, 1 amateur in each team. He was the amateur, and he finished third, 2 strokes out of winning it. And Scotty McCarron, who's won, I think, 5 times on the PGA Tour, won the tournament, and his partner. And the last day, this is 18 on Pebble Beach. So my other passion besides basketball is golf, and so I was able to go out there and see him and snap this picture. So this is his second shot in 18, and a 3-day tournament. The last day got rained out, but they were in the lead at the point that the tournament got rained out, so they went to the previous day's score and finished third. But it was a great moment for him. It was validation that, he thinks, the odds are mathematically stacked against him, but he's living out the dream. And if he, as his coach always says, you're 1 banana peel away from never playing golf again. So you got to be able to walk away from the game. And so, if he doesn't make it professionally, he wants to coach and primarily coach, kids. So be a great high school golf coach or college golf coach.
Wonderful kid. Lovely kid. Bryn Elliott.
Yeah. So what I say about Bryn is she's got her brains, charm, looks, and talents from her mother. Thank the Lord. And so Bryn, so Paxton's our legalist. What's the rules? And I'll do it. So Paxton, for instance, a dentist told him when he was 6 years old that sodas were bad for your teeth, and he hasn't had anything but water since then. He's 22 years old. It's just Paxton. He's just disciplined. You give him the rules. He knows what it is. He goes and does it. That's Paxton. Bryn's our free spirit. Rules are like helpful suggestions. They don't necessarily need to be followed. And so that's Bryn. She's very artistic, and she literally does get that from her mom's side. So when she decided her freshman year that she really wanted to be the first one in her family to actually go to college, and she got really passionate about school and started working really hard, and she put herself on a path to try to do really well academically. So she started studying, and she studied till midnight every night from kind of halfway through her freshman year on. And quite frankly, she's probably a little bit behind because she just didn't have those kind of drives before, and so she was catching up. So she went to school basically through the summers and everything for 3.5 years. Well, she needed something to relieve tension, so kind of Christmas her sophomore year, she said, "Hey, can I play one of those guitars down in the basement?" And I said, "Yeah, I haven't played in 20 years, please." 6 months later, I come in the house, she's playing a guitar. I was like, "How'd you learn that?" And she said, "YouTube." So, YouTube. And then 6 months later, so kind of Christmas her junior year, I come in the house and the piano's playing, and none of us play the piano. It's beautiful. Walk around the corner. I thought somebody was visiting us, and it was Bryn playing. And it's like, "How'd you learn to play piano?" She said, "YouTube." And but she today still wants to be a writer and to write novels and essays, and she loves that. And so her senior year, you ever heard this book, Tuesdays with Morries? Bryn lived out Mondays with Marie. Marie was a 75-year-old paraplegic artist. And so Bryn started cleaning her apartment every Monday afternoons of school, and then she started making her tea, and then it kind of ended up the last couple of years as really just spending time with Marie and talking about life. Senior year, Marie dies, And she wanted to write something as a tribute. And she said, I just sat down at my computer and I couldn't write. So she said, I picked up the guitar and she wrote a song. It's called Sky's Light. And so it was a tribute to Marie. It was beautiful tribute to Marie, very hopeful song. And so then she started writing. And so for her college applications, by December, she decided to turn in her songs that she'd written with her application. So just her guitar, voice mic. So I get a call one day from this guy, and he says, hey, I want to, can't talk to you about college application process, but I'd like to give you a word of encouragement. I said, what's that? He said, your daughter needs to do music for a living. I said, I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea. I said, I don't want my kids to be an actor, or I don't want them to be a musician. And he said, no, I'm really serious. He said, what's relevant about this is I'm 60 years old and I'm a first-year admissions officer. It's like, I don't know anything about admissions. But he said, what's important, and so I'm back at my alma mater, giving back for 2 or 3 years, because my alma mater did so much for me in my life. But he said, what's important, I spent the last 35 years as a partner writing music and producing music with Quincy Jones. And he said, Bryn actually has a songwriting gift. So I told her, and so it's kind of like, yeah. About a month later, he got back and said, do you mind if I send her music to a friend? And I said, sure. And so a couple days later, we got an email, and Bryn ended up talking to this guy named Cliff Magnus, who's produced Avril Lavigne and Kelly Clarkson and a lot of young female vocalists. And so Bryn ended up taking a gap year, moved to the West Coast, lived on her own at 18 for a year, and wrote and recorded 2 EPs. And then she ended up touring last summer. And so now she is in college, still living out her dream to be a college professor, and is a professional touring, recording musician. So,
touring with Belinda Carlisle and lots of folks.
Yeah, she's toured with Alanis Morissette and Brandy Carlisle this winter, who's had her first top 10 song ever, phenomenal singer-songwriter. And so she walked off stage a couple weeks ago, and behind stage was one of the Indigo girls who, they're Indigo women now, but Indigo girls, and just amazing people that she's had a chance to meet and what have you. And she loves both lives. She loves the academic life, and she likes the life on the tour bus. And so she needs coffee money. So if you can go on iTunes and look Bryn Elliott, that'd be good. We appreciate it. So.
She's the first one in the family to go to college.
She is, yeah.
And straight A's, first semester, freshman year.
That's true. So far, if we got our finals coming, we'll see how it goes, but so far.
At a little school up in the Northeast they call Harvard.
Yeah.
One of the funny stories that I say when I talk to people about our relationship is that you've said to me that 3 of your very closest friends are an African-American son of a Baptist preacher, a Indian Hindu, and an Ismaili Muslim.
Yep.
And, when you think about our world today, think about our population here at Georgia State, full of cultural diversity, socioeconomic diversity, racial diversity, religious diversity. Can you spend a little bit of time and broaden that conversation a little bit?
Sure.
Your 3 of your closest friends, how you view the world, a man of deep Christian faith, and something that's a part of your everyday being. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So this picture is in Ireland, and these are all guys in the industry. So President Marriott's there, Mitt's there, here on the right. Over on the left, the second from the left is Tom Baltimore, that you may see someday soon. He's the president and CEO of a REIT, and he's the son of a Baptist preacher. And Tom and Mitt and a gentleman who's not here, Mahmood Kimji, are really 3 of my best friends in life. And we all come from extraordinarily different backgrounds, geographically, financially, racially, and faith. And faith is critically important to me. My wife and I teach Bible studies. We're very driven by honoring God. And so politically, So if you go back to the picture of my partners, one was an absolute hard left liberal, one is a moderate, one is a conservative. I'll let you figure it out. But we had three partners, and we couldn't politically be more different than we are. And I think one of the most important things in life is kind of like, okay, what are you're 20, 22, you're going in, what do they tell you in business? Don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. And it's like, man, those are two of my favorite subjects. And so I think what's important is your best friends can be people that are extremely different from you. And matter of fact, they may become your best friends because they are different from you. And so we just had this conversation, I guess, where it sparked a question. And I said to Mitt, we were having lunch one time, I said, I think you have extremes, and you have one extreme which says that person's different. They think differently from me, they have a different God, they have different politics, and so I'm not going to be associated with them or keep my distance. I may have to cooperate with them professionally, but I'm not going to draw close to them, and that's a horrible, horrible way to look at things. I think the other thing, which is equally dangerous, and we live in a politically correct world, and I think this is very dangerous, is to sit there and say, none of that really matters, it's all the same. Well, it's really not. I mean, if you think about religion, one is a monotheistic God, one's a triune God, one's a polytheistic God, and then you haven't even got to pantheism. Those are very, very different views. They're different. And if they don't matter, there's no sense in pursuing those faiths or those beliefs. So they do matter. But the point of it is that I think to grow as a person, as a human, and to advance society, we need to get to a place where we can embrace people who just think very differently from us, and we can look at them and say, I need to be your friend because you do think differently from me.
So all of us aspire to lead lives and do something for which others will remember that we have lived. Mark, what would you hope that one day that your community would say about your life?
David Brooks just wrote a book. He's an editorialist for the New York Times, and my daughter sent me this article in a TED Talk that he gave. That's around. He's talking about a lot, and he said, "There's your resume and there's your eulogy. What you say about yourself on your resume, and what other people will say about you on your eulogy." And he said, "As you live life, which is more important?" And he said, the person you really are is the person that you're remembered having been, right? So, and I think he's right on that. I think he's dead right on that. So, we're all broken, sinful people, but I would hope that people would say he was faithful to God, and faithful to his family, and faithful to his friends, and faithful to his colleagues.
You have a deeply personal relationship with God, and you're now at a point where...
That's maybe more because of him than me, so he's doing a better job.
What is your conversation with God? What's he going to say about your life?
Well, I hope he forgives me for a whole lot. And I trust that he does and will, for sure. And I think that's the magnificence of God, is that he is forgiving. I think that we have a spirit that's put into us as humans, that you have this common spirit where you see evil is evil and good is good, and I think there is a difference between the two, and I think that's God-given, and God gives us different talents and circumstances, but we can all be blessed regardless of kind of where we come from, and I think he's very graceful, and I trust and pray that he's graceful to me.
I believe that Emerson probably said it the best, that our chief want in life is someone to inspire us to be what we could possibly become. And on a very personal note, my friend, I'm forever grateful for you and your inspiration and your guidance and your brotherly love. And I think most of all of us that know you would view that you have led a life that matters, a life that matters to our industry, to our community, to those of us that are here, most especially to your family, and of course to God.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Elliott.